These weird and wonderful history facts are sure to blow your mind. Find out all about which Roman emperor tried to wage war against the sea, the worst job for Victorian children, which spy used chickens, and which king died on the toilet. When we think of the medieval period, what tends to come to mind? People in stocks? Knights? Smelly peasants covered in dung? Well, contrary to popular imagination, medieval people weren't smelly at all. In fact, medieval Europeans took bathing very seriously. They had whole bathhouses specially designed to wash in. It wasn't always easy to keep clean in medieval times, but they viewed being clean with lots of importance. Later people, like the Georgians and the Tudors, might not have been so hygienic though. You might think people love tea today, but the lengths they went to in Stuart and Georgian Britain was a bit bonkers. Back then, tea was imported from China and therefore very expensive, and only the rich could afford it. It was so expensive, in fact, that special tea boxes were made with locks on them, so no one could steal your tea. It was always kept where the mistress of the house could see it, which is why tea making because such an occasion. You wouldn't trust your servants to make you a cuppa. Would you lock up your Yorkshire gold tea bags today? If you know one thing about Napoleon, you know that he was short, except he wasn't. He was actually 5 feet 6 inches, which was the average height for men of the time. He was probably made fun of as little in propaganda pictures by his enemies, to make him seem less powerful, but Napoleon himself was no shorter than most men. He also liked to surround himself with very tall soldiers, which probably made him look smaller too. Can you think of anything worse? But it's true, between 1644 and 1660, Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell, a sort of unelected prime minister, banned the celebration of Christmas. Cromwell was a Puritan, a sort of very strict Christian who believed that fun things like dancing, music and even makeup were sinful and upset God. Unsurprisingly, this wasn't very popular, and there were even riots over it. The English might not have liked it, but the Scots weren't as bothered. In Scotland there was no Christmas celebration from 1640 until 1958. Well, it wasn't a public holiday anyway. That means your great-granddad might have had to go to work on Christmas. Can you think of a more embarrassing way to go? We hate when someone accidentally walks in on us, let alone being found dead on the loo. The first English king to die on the loo was King Edmund in 1016, who got stabbed to death while doing his business. In 1216, exactly 200 years later, King John died on or near his loo from dysentery. Then, in 1760, King George II also went to his maker whilst on the porcelain throne. And King Henry I died in 1135 after gorging on lamprey, a kind of river eel, which means he probably had a bit of toilet trouble. You might not be a cat person, but you surely can't hate them as much as Pope Gregory IX. Between 1233 and 1234, Gregory, who, as leader of the Catholic Church had a lot of power, decreed that cats were agents of Satan, and should be destroyed. Maybe once scratched up his sofa real bad. This led to a mass killing of the poor magas, which in turn probably led to an outbreak in plague. Now there weren't as many cats around to kill rats. Nice work, Gregory. Not. Must be an Italian thing. According to the stories, Emperor Caligula, who was known to be a bit of a hothead, was returning home from a failed invasion of Britain, and desperate to have a war with something. It would be embarrassing to go home empty-handed, right? Well, Caligula decided to declare war on the nearest thing he could find, Neptune, god of the sea. He ordered his men to whip the waves and collect shells as proof of victory. Historians aren't 100% sure if this story is true, but the fact that people believed in shows what an oddball Caligula was. It's one of the most enduring American myths. President George Washington has a mouthful of wooden toothy pegs. As funny as the image is, it's not true. George Washington did indeed have false teeth, but they were made from ivory and other people's teeth, including, sadly, the teeth of enslaved people who couldn't consent. Gross. Would you put other people's teeth in your mouth? Harriet Tubman is best known today as a brave freedom fighter and abolitionist who fought against slavery in the United States. As an undercover agent helping escaped enslaved people, she was known to carry chickens with her. Well, when she thought a slaver might be getting suspicious of her, she would release the chickens and then recapture them. The commotion was so distracting that the slave masters didn't notice who she was. She would also pretend to read a newspaper, because enslaved people weren't supposed to be able to read, so she wouldn't be suspected. The Taj Mahal is one of India's most beautiful buildings. During the Second World War, India wanted to keep it safe from bombing, so the majestic tomb was covered in bamboo. This disguised it as a bamboo stockpile, in the hope that enemy bombers wouldn't realize what it really was. It worked, and the Taj Mahal was left undamaged.